Hello class, this is Kathleen Wheeler along with John Willard and Tabitha Wallace. Today we're going to present to you Conflict Theory, Analysis of Practical Applications. Conflict theory is used primarily in macro levels of social work, but at times can be applied to meso and micro. This theory is based on power differentials, and by definition is the unequal distribution of power in relationships. Examples of this would be the proletariat versus bourgeoisie, a boss and an employee's relationship, or as our book highlights, school bully versus a new student. Conflicts that arise are usually due to resources and interests within a society. This demonstrates that whomever has the higher power of the two controls the resources. We have learned that conflict is inevitable and therefore has become normalized over time. As social workers, we are the ones that mediate the conflicts in order to evolve the new outcomes. And as social workers, keep in mind the safety of both parties.
Conflict theory has the ability to be used across different settings and populations of people. Langer and Leitz discuss the application of conflict theory in social work. Conflict theory does not have specific steps but has guiding principles. Langer and Leitz discuss the following principles of conflict theory. Engagement helps the social workers build a relationship with the client through active listening. Assessment helps assess the situation and gather further observations from other parties involved. Goal setting helps the social worker and client find common ground in midst of a conflict. Intervention requires the social worker to make a plan of action in order to help guide the client to their goal. Termination occurs in conflict theory when the issue between power has been resolved. Evaluation is continuing of monitoring the power differences. Since conflict theory has principles rather than stages, it can be used across different settings and populations. Brief and his colleagues discuss that all different populations of people feel a threat from others when it comes to accessing needs. Conflict arises no matter which part of the population you are categorized in. Brief also argues that diversity can cause conflict, especially in organization and community settings. Langer and Leitz discuss that in macro-level social work, conflict theory can be used to understand the power differentials between groups of people and help dissolve these boundaries that make it hard to get their needs met. Conflict theory can be seen on the micro level when a social worker is conscious of their own differential between themselves and their clients. On the meso level, an organization trying to choose between making a profit or helping those in need is experiencing conflict theory in its entirety. Other examples are at home, in educational settings, healthcare system, and the government.
Hello, my name is John Willard. I'll be sharing with you a critical appraisal of the strengths and limitations of conflict theory and discuss roles within diverse client systems. First, let's consider some strengths. One of them being a wide and varied application. Consider macro. We may find the theory's appropriate utility in both organizational applications and practice applications between social workers and the communities they serve. There are also meso-level applications. For instance, Langer and Leitz use a good example of a mediation being utilized by a school counselor to eliminate bullying. Continuing to micro applications, we find examples of a patient advocate using conflict theory, fighting for scarce resources for their client. Now, despite these examples, each level of the utility of conflict theory has its accompanying limitations. For example, conflict theory does not have a prescriptive manual, if you will. Because the theory is put into practice in differing ways, it can be difficult to evaluate and be misused by the practitioner at any level. It is noteworthy that the theory sets out to normalize conflict. You may remember from a previous course the concept of staying in the mess, the idea being social workers may benefit from being comfortable discussing the tough issues. This blends well with conflict theory. Conflict theory identifies imbalances in power and causal factors. This too is obviously a strength, but at a micro and meso level, it should be considered that this could point to yet another limitation, a warning to the practitioner. Be aware that balance within a relationship, when changed, may come with a cost. Take a marriage, for example. A person may seek more power, but it could end in a divorce. The person that was disadvantaged before may now have equal power, but not willing to accept it at the cost of their marriage. Let's look at conflict theory as it relates to roles within diverse client systems. Langer and Leitz illustrate that examples of intervention include structural to reduce the unequal distribution of resources and cognitive to help individuals see their position in the issue. Take work with families. Using sculpting or eco maps, participants may find power differentials and in doing so create praxis. Consider civil rights and feminism. By speaking truth to power, individuals like Martin Luther King Jr. and Audre Lorde helped individuals see their position and provided context for seeking to equalize distribution of power and access. Also, there are implications for the workforce. Arguably, Marx stirred together the foundation of conflict theory for the working class. Leitz and Langer discuss the reaction to power imbalances, one of which is collective action. You may be familiar with this concept as unions. Yet another system is education. Many of our educational systems are rife with imbalances of power. Marx discussed the simple fact that we grow up in a setting where we must conform to standards, and this creates a distortion from our true self. Conflict theory can be applied between just two people, all the way through most major facets of our society, wherever imbalances of power exist. Paulo Freire, whose work is applicable to many of the theories we are learning here, said something that captures two important points about conflict theory. It is only when the oppressed find the oppressor out and become involved in the organized struggle for their liberation that they begin to believe in themselves. In these words, he illustrates both the cognitive and structural aspects of bringing voice and power to those who have been marginalized. We would like to encourage you to identify conflict in practice, normalize it, and be part of helping individuals see their position. How will you help bring balance to power?